श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। वक्रतुण्ड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः। गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। व्यासाय विष्णुरूपाय व्यासरूपाय विष्णवे नमो वै ब्रह्महृदये वासिष्ठाय नमो नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणी स्वयं व्यासेन कृतितं पुराणमुनिनां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्बा त्वामनुसन्ततां भगवद्गीते बिभेद्वेषिणीं नारायणपरो व्यक्तादण्डमव्यक्तसम्भवम् अण्डस्यान्तस्तु मे लोकः तद्दीपा च मेदिनी अवतीर्णश्च कालट्यां केदारेन्तरितश्चयः चतुष्पीठप्रतिष्ठादा जयदाच्चङ्घ्रो गुरुः शङ्खारूपेण मच्चिद्धं भङ्गीकृतमुबोध्य किङ्करी सदा माया शङ्कराचार्यमाश्रये. So we're looking in the Sankhya Yoga. Bhagavan, after Arjuna with his Shoka, Moha, delusion and sorrow, grief stricken, he drops his Gandiva. At that time, Bhagavan starts explaining. So in this Sankhya Yoga, we looked at from Shlokas 11th to 30th Shloka. Dehi nityam avadyoyam dehi sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani nattam shochitumarasi. Till that, we looked at Atma Vichara, Sankhya. Right. So Bhagavan explains what this Atma is and how the about what is actually known as Atma Jnana. He explains that Atma Vichara in that. Then from 31st shloka to 38th shloka, he explains about the duties. Right. So if you look at from duties point of view, so dharma vicha vekshya navikampitum. Even if you look from this as a from the angle of as a your duty, then also you should not hesitate in taking part in this battle. So he explains why it is important to take part in this battle as even as a kshatriya. So he concludes that saying that Sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddha yujyasva naivam papam apsasi in 38th shloka. Right. So whether happiness or sorrow, labha labho. So whether it is victory or win or loss, jaya jayo, victory or defeat, whatever it is, same kritva. So looking at everything as equal, yuddha yujyasva. So you take part in this battle, then you will not have any sin attached to you. So then he explains that I will explain you now from a buddhi yoga. So from a karma, how you are going to be detached from any sin. Right. So that's why he explains the karma yoga. So Esha te bhete sankhya buddhi yoge tvam shuna buddhva yukto ya partha karma bandham prahasya. So how you are going to this attachment from karmas, whatever that comes. So again, karma attachment, I believe I said this previously, whatever we do, whether it is in good deed or bad, there is attachment to it, right? So there is fruits coming out of that. So once that fruits comes, you have to experience those fruits. It does not go anywhere. So for that experience, either you'll spend time in heaven and then you'll have to take another birth or experience in this birth, whatever, right? So the only way to get out of that karma bandha, that attachment, or the result fruits of that karma is perform the karma without any desires. So that's what Bhagavan explains here from 39th shloka. He explains that Esha te biheta Sankhya Buddhi Yoga Tamshud. So that's Buddhi Yoga. I will explain this. Karma Yoga I will explain. Right. So he explains that even if you perform a little bit of Karma Yoga, this is not going to be lost, and there is no evil coming out of Neha Vikramanashosti Pratyavayo na vidyate. Mapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayam in 40th shloka. Right? He explains like that. So abhikramanashosti. So there is abhikrama. So that means even if you perform in karma yoga without any desire, a little bit of work, little bit of actions in that karma yoga without any desire, that's not going to be lost. So that means it is an accumulation that's going to be there forever. Even in the next birth, you will continue from that. So it is like climbing 10 steps, let's say, to go to that steady first Atma Jnana Nishta to reach that stage. If you climb, let's say, even if one step in this birth, you will continue from that first step next time, because that is not going to be lost. So till it will help you. So Salpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahodavaya. So even if you do a little bit, that will eliminate the great fear of this birth, because it will all come towards that final realization and Atma Jnana, right? So that's why he says Vyavasaya Atmika Buddhireke Kurvandana. So single-minded, focused on that, do your actions without any desire. So, but also Bhagavan wants that many people Veda Vadarataha Partha Nanya Dastiti Vadinaha. So many people who know Vedas, they tell you that with their Pushpitam Vacham, they say Yami Mam Pushpitam Vacham. Right? So with their flowery talk, they tell you that from karmas, you attain Swarga, you attain Bhoga Ishwarya. So they say that that is how one should perform, but you do not go listen to their words. What you do, you get Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. He says that you detach yourself from all the gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. You become nirdvando, nitya sattva, niryoga atmaman bhava, he says, right? So you focus on that atma only, paramatma only, that atma jnana only, do your karma yoga without any design. So when you do that, he explains in the 46th shloka, he explains that yavan artha udavane sarvada samprutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanada. So just like when there is flood all over, you don't need a small tank water you keep every day, right? So when that Atma Jnana comes, that happiness you experience, that ananda that comes, then that is nothing compared to whatever the little happiness you get, even in going to have Swarga or Bhoga Ishwarya, whatever you get, all those things you get from the karmas you perform with desire, whatever that little happiness you get compares to that nothing. It is like a small tank, right? Small well. But if you are when there is a flood everywhere, that's where it's like that realization, that Atma Jnana, when you reach that stage, it is like that. So that's why he says that. But thinking that you can only focus on the Atma Jnana, you can only go on the knowledge path, Bhagavan says that don't think about that, even though that is the final destination, final option where you have that realization, do not think that that's your immediate aim. Your aim is karmanne vadhikaraste mapalesha gadachana. He says that your current, because you are delusional, you are deluded by this ajnana, you have this ajnana, that's why your path is karmanyevadhikaraste. So your path is only karma. So only perform this karma yoga, then only you will reach there. So again he says that mate tungostu karmani. So do not even think that by sitting idle, not performing any karma, you can get away with this. So that's why Bhagavan says that perform your karma without any desire. Mahapaleshu gadachana. So without desire, perform your karma. So then he explains how to perform that on Yogastha Guru Karmane Sangam Tyakta Dhananjaya Siddha Siddhyo Samay Bhutva Samattam Yoga Uchyate. So that yoga is whether it is Siddhya, Asiddhya, so whether it is achieve something or not, Samay Bhutva, whatever the outcome of that, Samay Bhutva, you have look at all of that as equal. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. So that Samatvam, that equanimity that you are going to have is what called as the yoga. So that is the karma yoga. So when you perform that karmas without any desires, whether it is success or failure, whatever the outcome of that, you do it for Ishvara Pirtha. The Shankaracharya explains that perform that your karma Ishvara Prityarte, right? So just to please Bhagavan, perform your karma, not expecting anything. Even when you are performing, when your objective is to please Bhagavan, don't think that by pleasing Bhagavan, I'm going to get something. If you expect that, then you will have some desires. So you just perform it, thinking that this is going to, this is what my duty is. This is what I'm doing because that's what this is to please Bhagavan. That's all. That's my duty. Ishvara Prityartha. So that's why you do. So then Bhagavan again explains Durena Hevaram Karma Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya Buddho Sharanam Anitya Karpanapala Hetva. So if you don't perform this kind of yoga, then all the other actions you perform is inferior to this yoga. This yoga here talked about is Buddhi Yoga is talks about is Karma Yoga, right? So without engaging in this karma yoga, anything else you perform is inferior. And when you are not performing this, you are kripana, you are pitiable, right? So anything else you perform, we'll feel sorry for that. We feel sorry for you if you are performing going other routes because this is the best route, but you are taking some other paths. So that's what he says. Then he says in the 50th shloka, Buddhyakto jahatiha ube sukrata
Excuse me.
dushkrite. Yeah, 1 second, I'll come back. Buddhyakto jahatiha ube sukrata dushkrite tasmad yoga yujyasva yoga karmasu kaushalam. So he says that with wisdom, with viveka, reject sukrita dukrita, virtue, punya, papa, all these things, reject all those things. So devote yourself to this karma yoga, and that is the intelligent thing, action one should perform. Right. So Bhagavan explains that, and I think we stopped last time previously at that point. Before I continue, sorry, you had some questions.
Usually you share the shlokas, no? So I was just thinking that was not being displayed. I think you were just explaining the previous one, so that's why it was not displayed, isn't it?
Okay. So Bhagavan continues. Yeah, so it is the previous shlokas I was going through because it's been a while, and just recapping where we are. And it's always a practice to briefly recap what happened previously. It's called Simavalokana, so looking back on what's been said before we continue further. So then we continue in the 51st shloka where of this Sankhya Yoga. Bhagavan explains that karmajam bhukti buddhi yuktva hi phalam tyakta manishina janma bandha vinirmukta padam gacchantya. So because those who are devoted to this buddhi, this wisdom, they becoming men of realized enlightenment by giving up the fruits produced by this action, phalam tyakta, that means uh, giving up those fruits of those actions, they reach the state beyond evils by having become freed from the bondage of birth. So that's the meaning of this shloka. Now, if you look at word by word, karmajam means born of fruits of actions. Buddhi yuktva means the one endowed with equanimity of intellect. That is having this buddhi, this in the performing it, in this yoga, in this karma yoga. He means as, phalam means fruits, tektva means abandoning, rejecting, manishina means the wise, janma bandha virirmukta means freedom. Janma is birth, bandha means attachment, bondage, virirmukta means free from those things, so freedom from bondage of life and death. Padam means state, Gachanti means attain, Anamayam means devoid of sufferings. So here Bhagavan starts explaining the results of that karma yoga from this shloka. He explains that uh, here Shankaracharya, Sri Shankaracharya in his Bhashya, he starts by saying that palam tektva, by giving up the fruits, they are connected with the word karmajam. So the shloka starts with karmajam, buddhi yuktva hi palam tektva, right? So Shankaracharya says that palam, renouncing of giving up all those fruits of that is related to the word karmajam. Okay, so produced by the actions. So whatever that's produced by the actions, those fruits are the ones you're going to give up. So that's why. And he explains that because those who are devoted to this wisdom, this buddhi, who are instilled with the wisdom of equanimity, right? So those people, they become the men of enlightenment. They they become the men of enlightenment by giving up the fruits, that is the acquisition of desirable or undesirable bodies and things like that that one gets in the next birth. They are, by giving up that fruits which are produced by the actions, karmajam, that is produced by the actions, they gachanti, they reach gachanti padam, they reach that state, the supreme state of Vishnu, which is called moksha. So Shankaracharya here explains that padam param Vishnu mokshayam gachanti. So they reach that supreme state of Vishnu, that is called moksha. So by giving up that desire, by karma palam, they fruits of that produced by these karmas, they attain that moksha. So anamayam means that state uh, state of Vishnu is beyond evils. Anamayam means beyond evils, beyond all the evils, by having become freed from the bondage of birth, that is janma, uh, freed from janma bandha vinirmukta. So that means freed from all the evils. And the evil here we are talking about is janma bandha. So the birth, the bondage of birth, because that janma itself is a bondage, and freeing from that is why, even while living, that such a person, by performing this karma yoga, having this buddhi of equanimity, where he gives up the fruits of those karma phalas, that actions, whatever the results of that, he reaches that moksha. And through that moksha is the one which is free from janma bandha. So that's what this shloka here explains. And again, when actions are performed with an attitude of equanimity, it leads to becoming freed from the sins or the virtues or whatever it is. That's why by stages it becomes the cause of moksha. That's what this is trying to say. And again, when Shankaracharya here explains that palam, the fruits, he explains that the fruits of whether it is desirable or undesirable bodies, that's going to come. So again, desirable bodies means one getting bodies of devatas or getting a higher birth and things like that. Undesirable bodies, when we look at it, is getting next birth as animals or worms or whatever it is in the lower end. So those kind of things. So that's the meaning of this shloka. The alternative meaning, again, Shankaracharya here explains that since this buddhi has been mentioned as a direct cause of elimination of dharma and adharma, that means punya, papa, whatever it is the direct cause of elimination of all those things. Therefore, what has been presented in the three verses starting from 49th shloka, where Bhagavan says that Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya, he starts with that shloka in the 49th shloka. So, beginning with that shloka, what has Bhagavan has presented here is the enlightenment itself, which consists in realization of that supreme goal, which is comparable to flood all around that happiness, right? Yavanakto Udapane. So we looked at that. So which is that realization, which is like having flood all around, and that realization which arises from purification of mind is a result of karma yoga. So in the three shlokas, starting from 49th shloka, where Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya Bhagavan explains, from there to this one, 51st shloka, what's explained is through the Karma Yoga, purification of mind happens, and that results in the realization of the supreme goal, this Paramapada, Paramartha. So that's a real state of Vishnu attained through that. So again, Shankaracharya gives two definitions here. One is by this, performing this, having this equanimity, uh, those people, by giving up the fruits, they attain the moksha. But also he explains that through that karma yoga, purification of mind, one attains this realization. So the first half is explaining buddhi in the meaning of samatva buddhi, that means wisdom of equanimity. And the alternative meaning of the buddhi that he is talking here is the enlightenment. So both are mentioned, enlightenment relating to that, buddhi that related to that supreme goal or supreme reality, which is the one's goal. So again, what here we are looking at is, since those who have the idea of equanimity thus perform the actions by giving up the desires of results, become purified in mind through them. So, and having purified and having that avidya and its effects destroyed by the knowledge of this reality of Atma, and that realization arising from the Vedic statements, like, for example, Tattvamasi and things like that. So when one realizes that you are that, okay, so when one that realization comes, they attain the supreme state of Vishnu, and that state is called moksha. And that state consists of cessation of all the evils, right? And the attainment of the supreme bliss. And the supreme bliss is what's been previously said, that Yavanartha Udapane. So wherever having floods everywhere, right? So what is the use of this tank of water or a bucket of water when you have flood everywhere? Just like that, when that supreme bliss, that Paramananda one attains, when that attains, then all these evils end. So the evils, that's why uh, the Bhagavan, that's why what said here is, Bhagavan says that Yatreya Sanishchitam Bruhi, in the seventh shloka, for example, Arjuna asks him, right? So tell me, which is the absolute everlasting highest goal? So if you have Bhagavad Gita copy, you can look at the seventh shloka, where he says that Arjuna asks Yatreya Sanishchitam Bruhi. So which is the definite, absolute, everlasting highest goal? And Bhagavan explains here that this is the highest goal, that purification of mind which leads to realization, that is the highest goal. And that's why he says, undertake this kind of yoga of karma. So this karma yoga, you take that. That's the intention of Bhagavan here. Now, Arjuna might ask, when this yoga of wisdom, when this buddhi, uh, when is that going to be attained, and which this buddhi which arises from purification of mind brought about by pursuit of karma yoga. So when that such a state is going to be applied, or when shall I have the purification of the mind as I perform actions, just as you said. Okay, so if I don't attach myself to any desires and perform the action, when will my this purification of mind comes, right? So that's the question we all have. So Shankaracharya puts that, says that the next shloka we are going to look is related to that. So the answers that. So here in this shloka, Bhagavan says, Yada te mohakalilam buddhirvati tarishyati tadagatamsi nirvedam shrotavyasa shrutasya cha. So when your mind will go beyond this turbidity of delusion, then you will acquire dispassion for what has to be heard and what has been heard. So what has to be heard and what has been heard. So yada means when, te means your, moha means delusion, kalilam means swamp or bog or quagmire, buddhi means intellect, uh, vedita rishyasi means crosses, tada means when, tada means then, gatamsi means you shall acquire, uh, nirvedam means indifferent, shrotavyasya means to what it to be heard, and shrutasya means what has been heard, and cha means end. So Bhagavan here explaining when one is going to reach that state. He explains that yada, when. So here again, yada means simple meaning is when, but when actually here is saying that when that maturity of discrimination is attained. Okay, so when that discrimination level, when is you consistently in this steadfast manner, when you attain that state, at that time your buddhi, your mind will go beyond. It will cross over the cloudiness or haziness or turbidity of this delusion, the delusion of the dirt in the form of that's there in the form of delusion, in the form of non-discrimination, which is uh, which after confounding one's understanding about the distinction between the atma and uh, anatma, so atma and this body, so impels the mind towards the objects to say that when your mind will attain that state of purity, then at that time you will acquire dispassion for what has to be heard and what has been heard. So then here little bit more explanation. So again, when we say that your mind will attain, when that your mind will attain that purity, state of purity. So again, the deep rooted manifestations of ignorance in the form of like I am such, this is mine, and all those things, when it will attain that state of purity by giving up that dirt of rajasika and tamasika thoughts in the mind, okay, then that means when the mind become purified, it leads to the rise of discriminations, which in turn matures into detachment. So you'll detach yourself from all these things. So this is mine, I am such, this is my children, this is my family, this is my wealth, and all those thoughts that's there, you'll start detaching from that. And at that time, you will acquire dispassion. So that dispassion comes. So nirvedam, you will come that dispassion. And when that dispassion comes, you will have dispassion for what has to be heard and what has been heard. So what is Bhagavan saying here is what has been heard or what is to be heard. What is trying to say is, so again, in Manusmriti, for example, it explains that Pariksha lokan karmachitan brahmano nirveda mayan nastya krita kritena. So that means this in accordance, so it says that a Brahmin should resort to renunciation after examining the worlds acquired through karma. So the idea is that though the results in this form of detachment, you will understand that there has been purification of the mind. So through this, the result of this detachment, you will understand that there is purification of mind. So the idea implied is that at that time, what has to be heard and what has been heard becomes fruitless. So all these Vedas and Shrutis, everything which the Purva Bhaga of the Vedas, which talk about the karmas, do this puja, do this pratas, or do that, like that, live like this, and all those things, what has been heard, and even if you hear all those things, become fruitless because you are not interested. Your dispassion comes in because your detachment comes in. All of them becomes fruitless to you, useless to you. So that's why Bhagavan says here that state of realization or enlightenment or moksha is what Bhagavan here describes as Shrotavasya and Shrutasya. So what has been heard or what is to be heard. So he talks about that. So he says that all those things that you hear is you think that that's not no use because that binds you in this karma, in this cycle of birth and death, because you are now in this flood, right? So in this flood, so this tank water, whatever that Vedas, Purvavaga, Karma Kanda is saying, that's no use to you. So you have realized that that is of no use. So that becomes fruitless to you. So they whatever the scriptures except those relating to Atma Jnana, so right? So all those things becomes useless to you. So when that discrimination is referred here, gets matured, when one can differentiate, have that discrimination to there is fruits of the karmas, then it is fruitless that all the other things becomes useless to that person. So if then the question might come that by becoming possessed of that such a buddhi arising from discrimination about Atma after overcoming the cloudiness or haziness of delusion, when shall I attain the yoga of supreme reality? When shall I attain, which is the fruit of all the result of karma yoga, right? So when will I attain that state? When will I attain that yoga of supreme reality? When will I have that realization? So for that, Bhagavan explains in the next shloka, Shruti Vipratipannate Yada Stasthiti Yada Stasthiti Nischala Samadhavachala Buddhistada Yogamavapsasi. When your mind has become bewildered by hearing, uh, will become unshakable and steadfast in that Atma, then you will attain the yoga that arises from discrimination. So again, reaching that state is one thing, right? And then staying in that steadfastness in that Atma Jnana Nishta is the next level, right? So that's why here Bhagavan explains Shriti Vipratipanna means not allured by fruitive sections of the Vedas. Okay, so when the karma kandas and things like that, which talk about the results, benefits of performing something, when one not is attached to that, when not uh, 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 going for that, te means your, yada means when, stasthiti means remains, Nischala means steadfast. Samadho means in that divine consciousness. Achala means steadfast. Uh, Buddhi means intellect. Tada means at that time. Yoga means yoga. Avapsisi means you will attain. So here again, we look at when we look at the details of this shloka, yada means when, at the time when your mind or intuition or antakarana that has become uh, tossed about by hearing the Vedas that reveal the diverse ends, the means, and their relationships. That is all the things that are filled with divergent ideas, right? So when your mind has become tossed by all these kind of different things that Vedas say, and uh, when it becomes that mind will become unshakable, it is free from turbulence in the form of distractions. So, and it becomes achala, it becomes steadfast. Uh, that is that uh, when it becomes that it is free from any doubt. Right? So even in that unshakable state, it becomes steadfast. It does not have any doubts in that samadhi. That is to say, when in that self samadhi, in that atma samadhi, being derived in the sense that which is mind is fixed, then only at that time you will attain the yoga, that enlightenment, that self absorption that arises from the discrimination. At that time you will attain this. So the construction here again, the sentence is when your mind remains steady in atma, like a lamp, for example, in a windless space, after becoming nischala, that is free from all the impossibilities. So impossibilities, and this is also known as asambhavana, and the contrary thoughts, that is viparita bhavana, and it's achala, that is not polluted by dissimilar ideas, the result of long, earnest, and unbroken practice of satkara, like brahmacharya, study, faith, and all those things. When it is not uh, uh, polluted by dissimilar ideas, at that time you will attain enlightenment. So again, asambhavana means idea of impossibility. The with regard to pramanas or the valid means of knowledge in the form of Upanishads text like Tattvamasi and things like that, you think that uh, that do not teach Brahman. Okay, so Upanishads do not are not the proof of Brahman or Atman. And also it means that with regard to Prameya, that means the object of knowledge, that is non-dual Brahman is absurdity. It does not exist. And those kind of thoughts, it cannot be that anyway be identical with Brahman. Those are thoughts of impossibility. So those will not come in your mind. And also Viparita Bhavana will not come. The contrary thoughts, the one that says that I am human being and I'm not Brahman. Okay, so those thoughts will not come in your mind. So when mind becomes nischala, free from those kind of impossibility and contrary thoughts, and it is achala, it is not polluted by dissimilar ideas, the conflicting ideas, at that time you will attain the yoga. So that supreme self. So that supreme self is the realization, like for example, Tattvamasi, you are that, thou are that. So that is the result of the yogas. So you will have that akanda, non-relational uh, uh, realization at that time. So we'll take a pause there. We'll continue from there next time.